The Knights of Ren podcast is brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., your source for Star Wars Destiny singles, sealed product, and more. Check them out at coolstuffinc.com.
Show me again the power of the darkness.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll. D20radio.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Knights of Ren, episode 212. With me are Jay and Rick. Thank you for joining us. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. I'm good.
Great. So we have a ton of cards to talk about. Fantasy Flight released a new spoiler for it, yellow cards, and we're going to cover all of those. But before we get to that point, we're going to cover Jay and Rick both went to events over the weekend, so they're going to give a quick recap and talk about the decks they played, the decks they saw, and, you know, we're getting ready for Worlds. We're really excited, so now's the time to start testing your decks, prepping, getting ready, trying out new cards you may or may not want to play, and just get your mind wrapped around all the stuff you're going to see at World. So, Jay, why don't you lead off and tell us what you saw and what you played this weekend?
Yeah, so once again, I went up to Outflank Games in Fairfield, and we had a modest, roughly 20-man tournament. I brought my E-Ballad Django Trooper list that I was putting to the side for testing, but unfortunately, I did not manage to secure a ticket to Worlds, so instead of trying new stuff, I just decided to go back and play my old faithful deck, and it turned out fairly well. It was kind of a trial by fire. My first opponent was Django Double Trooper, and they managed to get Endless Ranks off, so that was a long, brutal, bloody battle. They decided, though, to kill Bala, then Trooper, and left Django last, and that gave me a lot of steam throughout the entire match. It was kind of weird. Django was pretty much the only character with equipment on him. I expected him to go down, but yeah, I managed to win that one. Next round was Vader Raider against my buddy Edwin again. Up to that point, the only person I'd been able to beat playing Vader Raider, and I managed to come out ahead once more. I killed his Tusken turn 2 pretty reliably with just a really good return roll before he got too scary, and I overwhelmed his Vader. It was a pretty quick match. It went mostly in my favor. And then I went up against Matt Dokos. He's won a lot of the events in the local area. He's one of the two main Vader Raider players, and he broke me in two. It was not close. I'm not even kidding. His Tusken Raider immediately got Mind Probe and never stopped rolling special sides. And I still tried to burn down Vader first, thinking that Mind Probe couldn't be that lucky, but I was wrong. So it was just a slaughter. He did he managed to get Bala to 1 health and just rested on 1 backup muscle, which is really just dirty and one of those things where I just can't use Bala anymore. And he's not incentivized to kill him, so he was sitting on that for most of the game, so that was pretty infuriating. And yeah, it ended fairly quickly. I felt kind of bad too, because that match was recorded, and my mood quickly dowered. But afterwards, I had one more match against another Vader Raider, and I managed to win this one. I got both of my backup muscles out. I got my F11, and that transferred around a lot and did a lot of work. I managed to keep Bala alive 1 extra turn with the best defense, and I managed to take him down, and ended up, due to strength of schedule, I managed to take second. So overall, and then Matt, the guy who beat me, he took first in a Vader Raider mirror. There were 6 Vader Raiders at the event.
Okay, I have a quick question. You know, people are starting to get prepped for Worlds. Based on the deck you played and the things you saw, what are some tips that you might have for people who are getting ready for larger events? Because you said you had 20 players, so more people are starting to show up in expectation for these large events happening around the nation. So what are some of your thoughts for people who want to improve their gameplay?
So with this particular deck, one thing that I sort of had to concede is that in order to win the mirrors, the more defense, the better you can keep your guys alive. And I fit into Dungeons, and I played a dungeon every single game, and it really mattered. Being able to extend further rounds, it gets more life out of cards like Fight Dirty. Helps you set up more to get better armed to the teeth. Like, surprisingly, defense is offense. Chris Bates talked about how his friend Zach played the deck, which was whenever he rolled shields, he excitedly took them. I, too, have adopted that play strategy of nearly never re-rolling shields and just trying to become nigh unkillable, and it's worked fairly well. So that's my evolved strategy with the deck. And something I always say as far as testing and prep goes, play against the decks you don't like, let them have the battlefield they want, and keep bad hands, and just try to figure out what you can do when you don't have a good turn one.
Also, Rick went to a local event, and we'd love to hear the same thing. You know, what did you play, what did you see, and how did it go?
Yeah, so I went to a little game night tournament at One-Eyed Jacks in Richmond, Virginia. 10 people showed up for that one. I played the same deck, Ebola, Django, Trooper. Mine's a little bit different in that instead of running from the list that we've been kind of putting out lately, instead of running the Tactical Masteries, I'm running 2 Unpredictables in that slot. Kind of just gives me more dice mitigation in there, and it's pretty much all damage and control. Almost 50% of the deck. So we had 3 rounds, ended up going 2-1. The first round I got paired against my playtesting partner, Todd, who unfortunately didn't want me to share the deck that he is running because he's currently testing it for Worlds. And it's a little bit different than what we've seen out there. But I can tell you that, as Jay was saying, lost the battlefield roll, drew horribly after mulligans. So even with that said, I didn't have a upgrade until turn 3, but I was able to, on turn 3, get down an F11D and a holdout blaster with the ambush action, getting a DH-17 pistol onto Django before he would able to roll in. That helped to turn it around a little bit. The Trooper went down second turn after me playing a best defense. He kind of looked like a juicy target. But after that harsh start, it wasn't too much of a game. We were down to 1 character each in the end. He was able to close it out. Second round, I played against Monty. He was running a Jabba Phasma list, which is pretty interesting. We talked a lot about how Phasma and Dooku are very similar with their dice and their point range there. So it eschewed the blue from Dooku for the red from Phasma, allowing him to run things like Commanding Presence to up the either the damage on Phasma's die to 4 or get rid of red dice that are everywhere right now with the blasters, or even pushing her discard side up to 3 discard. But standard fare, go after Jabba first, knock that out, and it's pretty easy after that. He did almost one-shot Politique when Phasma rolled in special on commanding and two range damages on there. But I was able to pull it out. Didn't lose a character. And round 3 against Ruben, he was playing lead Akbar and 2 hired guns. He joked around after the tournament that he needs to pay his hired guns a little bit more because they never really got too much damage off of him. The only character I lost in that game was the Trooper, who was able to take 9 damage between 2 best defenses and a cannon fodder. And then it ended up with Bala with, I think, 3 shields on him, and Django had about maybe 5 damage on him at the end. And that was after chewing through 2 second chances on both of the hired guns. Basically, good rolls. Django decided to show up that game and able to get somewhere around second or third, depending on where the tiebreakers went down to. My testing partner, Todd, won 3-0. He didn't want the tokens because he's using the tokens from Etsy, those little metallic button-looking ones. So I have now the 10 tokens, so I'm good with that, how it ended up.
Awesome. So the same question we asked Jay, people are getting ready for Worlds, people are prepping. What are some tips based on what you saw and what you played that you'd like to give to the people who are listening?
Yeah, so mine was my event. People were kind of testing out new things. This is probably the third or fourth at that store. So a lot of people were trying out new things. There were a couple Vader Raiders in the tournament, a couple mill decks, and a couple of just kind of ranged aggro decks like the hired gun and Akbar list there. But it was kind of a group of unknown lists that we were playing against. And I've been playing with this Ebola list for going on a month now, maybe 6 weeks. So I really like to get a deck that I like and then play it as much as possible so that I know it in and out, making little subtle changes as necessary to the different matchups. But I really think that this Ebola list is one of the top lists that you can play right now. I never felt threatened except for on the loss, and part of that is that deck does have a slightly bad matchup to the deck in question, but also that opening opening mulligan, not getting an equipment out till turn 3 kind of put me in a backward step from the start. But I still was able to, after things started turning around, I was able to get back to where it was only one-on-one character. But again, just right now is where you really need to choose that deck, or at least have a couple decks that you know that you want to play either one of those, and then just start jamming games and testing it against every known deck that you can think of that you may play against, especially the big like Vader Raider, mill decks, like a Dooku Kylo, things like that.
Awesome. And as we get closer to Worlds and all these events coming up, we're going to be sharing, more tips and more ideas. The first big event that's coming up that we've been advertising for, and we really think is going to be a lot of fun if you're up in the Northern Virginia area, is the Steel Open happening early in April. And then right after that, we've got Worlds, and following there, we've got Gen Con, we've got the Nova Open. There's a lot of events coming up in a short time span. So this is a great time to not only start preparing yourself, but getting, like Rick said, getting accustomed to how your deck plays. How do you get out of situations? How do you get into situations? How do you set yourself up for advantageous positions and all kinds of things like that? And really the best advice we can give is get out and play the deck as much as possible. Even if you win, even if you lose, you're still gaining valuable experience and information and becoming a stronger player because you know what you can do, you know what you can't do, and you know how to deal with threats. And that's the best that you can ever get with your deck, is understanding threats and how to deal with them with the options you have. And if need be, make small adjustments and, keep testing and go on and, win your games. So we're going to move on now to something we're really excited about. Spirit of Rebellion is coming out very soon, and Fantasy Flight gave us a bunch of spoilers, and we're going to jump right in and start talking about them. So the first one, I'm really excited this card is in set 2. Force Awakens, the theming in Awakenings was great, and I was really wanting to see a little bit more, not too much of episode 7, but maybe a few more characters, and Maz was definitely one on my list I was hoping to see soon, and we got her. She was spoiled. So we've got Maz Kanata, the Pirate Queen. She is a yellow hero card. She comes with 8 health, and her die faces are 1 range damage, 1 focus, 1 shield, 1 resource, and a blank. She comes in at 8 points and 11 points for her elite 2 dice, whatever you want to call it. And her special effect is, after you activate this character, you may resolve up to 2 of your dice. So this is like a soft Django kind of cheat character, where you can activate and then resolve before your opponent can do anything about it. And this, I'm really excited because now her obviously her weak point is she doesn't have damage and her health is very squishy, but her die points are lower. It's the lowest in the game we've seen so far, so she's more accessible than Rey to slot into decks. And with all the funky little ambush shenanigans Yellow has, you can ambush things in, roll Maz, resolve dice, and do all kinds of combos. What do you guys think about her?
Right away, yeah, a lot of people have been kind of talking about how either she's kind of a Django-esque character or maybe even an answer for Django. I really like that you don't have to just resolve her dice. You can resolve, other characters. It doesn't have to be the equipment that's on her, things like that. The 2 focus really helps out there. If you have her at elite, you got a really high chance of rolling a focus and then turning another die to whatever you want. Shields are great. She's very much like Balatik, and he's one of my favorite characters in the game right now. they trade off the one focus, or she trades one focus for Bala's +2 range damage, and essentially the same character after that with an ability you're probably going to be able to use. You're going to be able to use it every round, unlike Bala, where you'll either get it once or twice a game.
Yeah, she's a pretty great character through and through. A lot of focus, cheap, like you both have already said. I'm a little curious how her ability works with modified dice. I'm guessing you're in the clear as long as you have, the non-modified and a regular modified side that match. You could do both, but that's something hopefully, will get easily clarified. She's pretty good. She's really good with equipment, and I'm sure she's going to see a whole lot of play. I think the only comment I have to make to add is that I'm just surprised she has 8 health. Just small medieval thing with such a little cost, regardless of balance or flavor. I mean, 8 is a pretty solid number.
I feel like we're going to see her either replace Rey or have some really funky teams where you have one Rey, one Maz, and some other main character, and you're gonna try and use Rey shenanigans to get multiple actions, roll out Maz, and resolve a lot of dice real fast. If that doesn't work, that's cool, but I think the biggest thing I love about Maz is the fact that you can resolve up to 2 of your dice. Essentially, you're getting 3 actions for 1, because you're rolling her as 1, and then you get to resolve up to 2 dice, and if they're different symbols, that would be multiple actions you would have to take in the turn. Plus, with her focus, like Rick was saying, you can roll her out, get a focus, and then say you're running a Luke Skywalker with her. Cool. You can use the focus, turn his die to 3 damage, and then use that 3 damage. So she's going to be really strong in decks that have high damage potential to snipe out characters before you can do anything. And having access to yellow for heroes, cheap yellow, is great, because now you can use some of the new cards we're going to see, but you get access easily to electroshocks and reversals and all kinds of things that yellow can really use to help accelerate not only damage, but dice mitigation. I mean, she's a rare, so she's not going to be incredibly difficult to find, and I think we're going to see a lot of Maz in the upcoming meta just because of how not only flexible she is, but how efficient she is, and that's really great for the game, I think.
Also, one last note is just by the nature of activating 2 dice, she makes special sides really, really reliable on average. I mean, you're not always going to roll a focus, but when you do, she can turn any other die to the special, and then you can fire away.
Yeah, and she kind of fills that gap that heroes have needed in order to be able to do 3-character, 4-dice lists other than using just Rey. Kind of like Balatik does for villains right now.
Yeah, it's really exciting that heroes are getting access to the things that villains have had, lots of characters, low numbers, really efficient effects, and high burst damage potential. Django was the villain answer for how do I, do lots of damage real fast. You roll Django, and then you resolve on your turn. Now with Maz, you can roll, say, Luke, turn 1. If he doesn't get a good roll, cool. Roll out Maz, next action, get a focus, potentially, and then turn that damage into 3, resolve it before your opponent can do anything. That's not only consistent damage, but that's big damage. I mean, imagine being able to just consistently get dice onto the field and resolved before your opponent can do anything. Now, what's interesting is she poses a threat to control, because you have to sit and think about Maz can roll 2 dice. She can potentially get a focus out of those 2, which can turn a die of whatever she wants to a number she wants. So do you prematurely remove a die you don't want to deal with in fear of Maz? Do you wait and there's nothing you can do? I mean, it's going to force players to make much more interesting considerations and decisions when it comes to the dice on the field and removing them before something happens that they can't stop. And I think that's great. So moving along, the next card we're going to talk about is Maz's Castle. And Rick, I think you've got this one.
Yep, we got Maz's Castle on Tokadana? Is that how you pronounce that one? Jay, you're the lore expert. It's claim, draw 2 cards, place any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck in any order. Yeah, this is probably one of the best battlefields that we've seen so far in the game. It's card draw that generally in Destiny is not considered great, but this is more card filtering. Allows you to, before you discard at the end of the turn, allows you to draw up, put cards that may be better in the later game down on the bottom, especially if you're running a deck that claims every turn, to be able to get those back in. Get them back closer to the top when you need them. Lets you pick what you need at the time, and you can even just discard those 2 cards if you don't need them, and then continue to draw up to 5. I really like it. I think it's going to be one of those battlefields that everybody starts running for the, especially once Spirit of the Rebellion comes out. It's going to be like in the initial days, it's going to be one that people are going to run a lot of.
I think it's a pretty cool battlefield. I like ones that have a little more interaction with the actual game state. Don't get me wrong, I fully understand and appreciate the potential of like having a much better hand for next turn can be, how that can snowball into getting like your pieces of stuff or better gear, or equipment or removal or whatever you need. Like that can be just as impactful as, like the battlefields I like dealing one unpreventable damage, or I really think the carbon freezing chamber is really excellent. So I think it's neat. The game is fairly consistent in getting through your deck. This just makes it quicker and better. And for those who like are really good at counting their decks and having an idea of where stuff is, this lets you, if you're running a one of like say Arm to the Teeth and you have it in your opening hand, maybe you throw it at the bottom. It might be too late, but just concessions to think about. Also, this dodges having cards in your hand that you don't want to discard against discard decks, which is pretty cool. But it also, one of the things that kind of makes me nervous though is like this really helps your opponent if you're not good at claiming with the particular list you're bringing. So it's very double-edged sword.
I'm excited about the card for a couple of reasons. It is a filter, but like it's a dirty mulligan in the middle of the game whenever you want, because you draw 2 and then you can place any number of cards from your hand on the bottom, which means you could place all of them. So in these scenarios where, Rick and Jay were saying, yeah, we got a bad mulligan, we were just not able to get our hands on equipment until turn 3, you can utilize this to look at your hand, gain access to 2 more cards, and if there's nothing you need, you can put them all at the bottom, because once you've claimed the battlefield, your turn is over. So you're going to draw back up to 5 one way or the other. So if you're just sitting on nothing in your hand, it's a great filter. It's a great way to accelerate your deck and get into options you desperately need. So I feel like this will see play, and this will definitely help with consistency issues. Now, you should obviously build your deck to be consistent, but this is also a great reason to run a couple one-ofs. We're talking about, hey, do I run one of this? Do I run one of that to help tech against certain decks? If you've got a starting team that rolls high numbers consistently, there's not a bad reason to take this as your battlefield and run a couple one-ofs in your deck, because you're going to be able to get into those more consistently to have responses to bad matchups and decks you need to stop. So it's a powerful card in certain aspects, and I'm really excited to see what it does in the meta once we get more established with Spirit of Rebellion, out and about in the wild, and people are starting to build decks with both Awakenings and Spirit, and seeing how these combos together. I think it's a fantastic design too. Just the fact that you get a +2 and you get to put whatever you want back, not just put 2 back. I love this card so much.
I just want to jump back on what Jay was saying about protecting against mill. That's a really good thought there, that if you've done everything in the turn and you got a Jabba sitting there with that can clear out your hand with what he has left on his dice out there, his 2 discard sides, you can claim, draw cards, and then put your whole hand back onto the bottom of your deck if you want to, and then that's 2 or 4 cards that he's not going to hit. That's actually a pretty good idea there. I like that. I
actually didn't want to say that out loud, because the first moment I read the card, my mill deck died because of that. Someone could sit on a turn where they roll out all their damage, and then they go, say I roll up my Jabba, it's like, 4 discard, cool. I'll claim the battlefield and just put my whole hand at the bottom of the deck. Now, my dice don't do anything. I'm sitting on removal of cards that I can't remove, and at best with Jabba, sure, make some money or focus some things. It really hurts Mill, so I was just kind of sad, because this card is super good in a lot of situations, and it is double-sided, but it's not double-sided like horrendously where, an Emperor's Throne Room, and you can use a Poe and just get lots of damage out, or, use your Millennium Falcon for funky stuff. This just lets you draw cards and put them back as many as you want. So you could not really hurt people in terms of damage. You just get better options. So I think it's a fairly balanced card. But yeah, Mill is in a lot of trouble if you see this on the other side. It's going to hurt.
Now, granted, mill decks are designed to claim quickly, so you probably are going to sacrifice a little bit by doing that, but the option is there, and it's a good little idea that I didn't originally think of when I looked at it.
It does change the inherent design of claiming the battlefield, because now you kind of have to determine, hey, early game, roll out some dice, and you get law discard. Do I eat the battlefield real quick to absorb that, or do I keep going? So I like the way it changes the mind games in a really interesting way. So moving along, the next card, Jay, I think you're going to enjoy this bad boy.
We got a preview of another legendary, which is the Bowcaster. This thing is crazy. Cost 4. Its die sides are 2 ranged, 4 range for 1 resource, plus 3 ranged, 2 disruption, has a special side, and a miss. This thing has redeploy, and the special is deal 1 unblockable damage to up to 2 different characters. This thing has 4 damage sides, one of them being 4 damage. Its average damage is extreme. This thing's a beast. It's something you probably want to overwrite into and probably aren't upset about it. I find it a little funny that thing has redeploy. I think, as I've been told, I'm the sort of a lore guy. I don't think that's a very common weapon that a lot of people are familiar with. Granted, it was point and shoot the picture, and Han made it look pretty easy as he unceremoniously toasted Traitor, and then was like, "Oh, this thing's pretty good," which makes me think, does Chewie have bad aim? How would he not have known that weapon is effective? I don't know. But getting back to the game, I think this card's pretty gross. Just looking back, if you slip this onto Maz, she rolls out and can just flip it to 4 damage in 1 activation. Holy cow. And the odds aren't that unrealistic, or just go for the easy 2, or if the modified trick works, this thing is a house. I think this card will see some play in Hero quite confidently. I don't know, I'd run it. It's definitely worth overriding into. The redeploy makes it just utterly disgusting. 4 damage sides. There's very little not to like. No one gets really excited about Disrupt, but there might be more Disrupt support in this set. Who knows? But 4 out of 6 is still just great on this thing.
Yeah, I think the 2 disrupt is the sweet spot for disrupt. You kind of want it to be able to, if you happen to roll it on the first action of a turn, being able to clear the 2 resources that your opponent gets. So that being 2 resources is good. If it was at 1, it would just kind of feel tacked on, and you probably would re-roll it a lot more to get to those damage sides. Going back to Maz, she can even, if you don't have any resources out, and she happens to roll the resource and the 4 for 1, she can resolve her resource, gain it, and then pay for that 4 damage. So yeah, it's going to be funny watching Chewie's girlfriend swinging with a bowcaster out there. But the flavor text feels a little tacked on there just to describe the redeploy that they put on. So, but again, I think it's the only time they ever talk about a bowcaster in any of the movies. So
I like the fact that we get to see yellow first. I know that's Jay's favorite color. It's mine after blue. The first time I saw this, I immediately thought about Infamous being able to ambush this thing in and then roll. And just the horror of what so my imagination is, you flash this thing in, you roll out the die. You've got a 4 and a +3. Those can't be removed by Electroshock. Electroshock has been one of the cornerstone removal cards in the game, and we're finally seeing some cards with numbers that Electroshock can't hit. And being able to sit on a 4 or a +3 is really daunting, because your opponent, if they want to remove it, they're going to have to spend a very, very good removal card just to get rid of a single die. And if they don't remove it, you're going to punch him in the face for a lot of damage. And of course, like we said with Maz, she can just blow those dice up without you having a chance to do anything. So I feel like Bowcaster is a strong addition for heroes because they don't currently have any big burst damage cards like we've seen out of Villain. And this is exactly what they needed. It's fully costed. Redeploy is great because if someone dies, it just moves over. It doesn't actually have a spotty yellow character only restriction. So you can run this with Maz in your deck and then stick it on like a Rebel Trooper or like an Admiral Akbar or whatever. It doesn't have to be on a yellow character, which I think is also a really good deal for this card. So I'm really excited. I think we'll see. It won't dominate play, but I think it definitely will see some play in certain decks for sure.
One last thing to mention, though, as I brought it before with cards like Force Lightning, I do notice that in the set there's a lot of beefy that we've seen so far ranged gear, and you do have to remember, like, Deflect is probably never going away. Force Throw, also a card, not going away, so there is a little bit of risk packing this much heat, so always keep that in mind and try and be aware of the board. It's kind of cool that, like, if you're using Force Throw and you can't quite get the side you want, like, two of these sides are enormous. So that still, like, works in your favor, also against you. And then we'll get to the card later, but, like, there's a card that cares about the total value of your dice, and 4 of these sides or 2 or higher. So we'll circle back around to that concept, but another thing to keep in mind is, like, the numbers on this die are just absolutely enormous.
All right, so the next card we're going to talk about is Chewbacca himself, and this is another legendary card in yellow, so we know both of them. And Chewie is a loyal friend. He comes in with 12 HP, big numbers. His point cost are 12 and 16, so 12 for 1 die, 16 for 2. If you look at Han, he is 14 for 1 and 18 for 2. So you can run a 3 dice Han and Chewie team in either combination of 2 Chewie, 1 Han. Or anyways, his die faces are 1 range damage, 2 range damage for 1 resource, 2 melee damage, 1 resource, 1 special, 1 miss, and his special effect says, turn an opponent's die to a side showing damage, ranged or melee, to deal that damage to a character. And of course, his flavor text is, his, which I can't do, but I have a lot of thoughts about this card, and I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, so we're seeing on the characters a lot more consistent higher damage than what we saw in Awakenings. 2 sides on here with 2 damage. One of them is a pay side, very similar to Kylo. And then, he's 4 damage sides on him. So yeah, he's going to be beefy. He feels more of a good pairing with Rey than even Han does in the Han Rey decks. Being that he also has a melee side, the fact that his special is so good with like Force Throw, you kind of get that force choke somebody to another high damage or high value side, and then throw it at him in the same action. 12 hit points is definitely nothing to sneeze at when you get things like Second Chance that can go on him, and another one we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, Chewie is... He's pretty good.
When I first saw him, I honestly thought that I actually think he's a little undercosted for how much value you get out of him. 4 damage sides, all of them are unmodified. They're all starters. 12 massive hit points. I mean, he's going to last forever. You can second chance him. Like, it's just crazy. Lone operative, which again, I keep spoiling ahead, but he's just like pound for pound so much value in one card. I think he's amazing, and I think his point cost only reflects that they just wanted to make sure no matter what he could be played with Han. I think this card is phenomenal through and through. There's really nothing not to like about him. I know to some people his special seems a little quirky and risky, but you can always turn their damage down if they've rolled out, just for a basic example, like Dooku's rolled out a 2 damage side, you can flip it to the 1, only hit him for the 1, so that you still dealt some damage, or in his case got rid of a card. Maybe not the best example, but you get what I'm saying. You can turn it down, you can turn it to modified when they don't have modified, you can turn it to pay sides when they can't pay for it. And of course, the throw combo is absolutely just disgusting. There's really absolutely nothing bad about him. He's great as a 1 die. He's great as a 2 die. I imagine we'll see a ton of him. He's got so much staying power, so much damage, so much reliability. I'm a little nervous, to be honest. And as a side note, I was looking at the wrong card earlier when we were about to talk about it, so I thought his flavor text was, "I like this thing, Han Solo." I thought that was pretty funny.
Now that's on the bowcaster, but man, Chewie is fun. I know we're Knights of Ren, but this might move me over into good guy territory because he's got the numbers. He's got the health. His point cost is great. You can build him into many teams. He fits super well. And a big thing about his special, when you turn an opponent's die to a side showing damage, it's possible to turn their dice to modified sides and deal damage. Therefore, you can turn off potential damage that they have into unresolvable damage, and you still get something out of your special. So he's really good, with Maz. Once again, Maz is just a combo piece for a lot of stuff. So you can, roll specials and resolve Chewie to turn something to a number, deal damage. And if you've got blue in your deck and you're running a force throw, you can roll that force throw into that damage you just turned to basically double the damage. There's all kinds of funny shenanigans you can use Chewie to basically kind of poke at your opponent. Like Jay was saying, roll their numbers down. If you can kill someone real quick, roll their numbers up, get a quick snipe, get those dice off the field. All kinds of really great things. My biggest love for Chewie is his health. We haven't seen a lot of heroes that are nice and tanky that don't cost a fortune, and he's both of those. He's big, he's healthy, and he doesn't cost half of your die point or half of the points to build your team. So you can slot him in, he can take a hit and then dish it right back out. And I think that's really great for heroes because people have been asking, how do hero decks work against villain decks? This is a great answer. And I also think it's interesting we're seeing a lot of mixed damage in these new characters coming out of Spirit of Rebellion. Chirrut, he's got melee and he's got range. Chewie also has those things. So Chewie's effect is able to target both melee and range damage. That's going to be great because you can use that also as a disruption tool. If someone is running mixed damage and they get some modified sides for one, and you can flip their base sides to a different number or a different symbol, that's great because now you're dealing damage and you're not going to have that damage thrown back into your face. So I think Chewie is going to have a really great place to be, and he's going to be a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about it is, like Jay was saying, he's a little aggressively costed, and I think that's more along the lines to be able to fit in with Han for thematic reasons. And then, the 2 range for 1 is a little expensive, but that kind of brings it down to kind of try and make it a little more in line with the points cost. Also keep in mind that his special is dealing that damage to a character. So for things like Hunkered Down in your opponent's melee decks, if they have a Hunkered Down on a Dooku and you can get in 3 melee damage off of their die to get it, it'll help clear the Hunkered Down itself too.
So the next card, this is going out to Rick, but this is something Jay hinted at a few minutes ago, and this is a very exciting card.
Yeah, so we got Planned Explosion. It's an uncommon hero yellow 0 cost event. Play only if you have dice showing a combined value of 10 or more. Remove all of your dice and deal 10 damage to a character. That essentially says kill a character when you roll 10 or more. Looking at the die sides, like Jay was saying earlier, with what we're seeing from Spirit of Rebellion, this is going to be a little bit more easier than we may expect, just judging off of what's in Awakenings. But even then, when you got hired guns that have 3-for-1 sides, you got Hans with 3-for-1s, you don't even need those 4-for-1 bowcaster sides on there. This really reminiscent of Fight Dirty out of Villain Yellow, and I love that card. I'm gonna really try to see if this is viable, and if it is, you're going to definitely see a lot of this.
This card is, pretty exciting, pretty scary. It's interesting, though, in that, it has diminishing returns over the course of the game, so if your damage, for whatever reason, is spread out, or, you were already trying to kill their bid guy, it's still great to one-shot a guy, but it feels less good if you hit like a stormtrooper. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just like things to remember that over the course of a match, like you can't always expect to get the full 10 is what I'm trying to say. Also, shields are very relevant when trying to hit some of the larger targets. There's a lot of things to think about. The other thing too is that when you decide to pull the trigger, you have to get rid of all your dice, not just the dice that equaled 10. So your remaining, if you like rolled in heavy and you still had some cool stuff left over, you have to make the choice if you want to use the leftovers and try to manipulate them while trying not to lose your 10, which makes it a little tenuous. Anyway, so just those a lot of like little factors come into this. I think this card's good. I think it's going to lead to some pretty hurt feeling turn ones if you get a good upgrade out early or something crazy to happen. So it's it's scary. It's nuts. I'm already seeing like Akbar hired gun lists just going nuts for this thing.
Something about Planned Explosion that really excites me about where the game is going is that I was thinking about, say you have Elite Han and you've got a bowcaster equipped to him. If you happen to get a just amazing roll, you get 2 3-for-1s and the 4-for-1, you have 10 on your numbers, and you would have to pay 3 resources to resolve that 10 damage, and this card allows you to deal the 10 damage for free. And it's an interesting thing because you see a lot of disrupt, you see a lot of ways to remove people's resources with a card coming up, and this card doesn't really care about that. And I think that's really good for heroes because they have a lot of ways to build resources, and so it's really a big target for disrupt in removing of the resources. So the fact that you can get good rolls, people, use their disrupt thinking you don't have enough money to resolve your dice. Cool. I'll play Planned Explosion and deal 10 damage, and I'm good to go. Now, like Jay said, you do have to remove all of your dice, so it's very devastating if you have, say, like 15 on the field, and you may want to resolve some of those dice and then use Planned Explosion, but you don't want to signal to your opponent that you have the Planned Explosion, so timing is important. It's just a very unique card. I don't think it's going to be as reliable as, say, like Fight Dirty or Armed to the Teeth, but the 1 or 2 times you use this in a game or in a tournament, that's going to change the swing of things, because 10 health, 10 damage is a lot. That's just a huge amount of damage. And with the yellow decks, I mean, if you've got hired guns and you've rolled out all their 3-for-1 sides, it's not impossible to get up to 10 and pull this off turn 1 or turn 2. I mean, it's very viable to see this go off turn 2 with the right deck. I mean, I think it's a very unique card. Is it going to see a lot of play? Not entirely sure, but when it does, I think it's going to shift and move a lot of people when they see, 10 damage for 0. What?
Last thing I want to say is that the art is amazing. Cool people don't look at explosions. FFG, if you're listening, I think if we could get an alternate extended art of this card, I think that would be incredible. Of just a similar scenario of some character not looking at explosions would be great.
One other thing that I didn't talk about when I was talking here, but I've always said that mill decks need a way, or they need to get rid of at least one character in order to mitigate the damage coming at them. And this is an option for heroes. Padme with 2 discard side. And you can add up to 10 pretty quickly with that deck, with thermal detonators and such. Now you're getting rid of some of your mill in order to do that, but I think it's definitely worth it to knock off a character and not have to deal with that damage output, and then be able to finish out the mill in the subsequent turns.
All right, so moving along, next card is Jay's, and tell us what you think about this bad boy.
I have Lawn Khan, again, yellow, big surprise, 0 cost. Gain 3 resources if there's another copy of this event in your discard pile. Hero only. It's a common. So I like this card, especially and specifically because of the new battlefield that we talked about earlier. You in a lot of games you do tend to go through your deck. It being a 0 cost card helps you cycle rather quickly, and I actually think a surprise boon of 3 resources is really hard to be upset about. And Hero, I mean, that's it's immediately a second chance or, you know, a heavy blaster or more resources for your bowcaster. It's for two, you know, you're thinking about, you have to get them both. It can be tricky. I mean, you do have a really good weighted mulligan in this game. I'm not saying like every hero deck should run it, but if you're running that battlefield and your deck is relatively cheap, which Hero's been able to do quite reliably, if you confidently can cycle through this deck, your deck, I really personally like this card a lot. I think it has value. I think the sudden like boom, more resources. Also, the first time you cast it as a stall action, which a lot of people really enjoy, just like again drawing out Django or whatever else. So it does have that kind of utility too. You have to run two, obviously, otherwise it's a dead card, but it's a common, so I think we're all going to be like, we're just going to have cons left and right, so that won't be an issue. But I side by, I would play it.
The null action for the zero cost event, just to be able to stall a little bit if you're waiting for your opponent to do something, is great. You can always discard to reroll if this is the first one you've drawn. You have things in Hero Yellow like Scavenge that discard cards off the top of your deck to put upgrades and supports in your hand. So that's another good use with this, to just kind of mill it off with that, and then you already have it in there. Drawing two in the opening hand with a Millennium Falcon seems pretty good to me as well. Never going to happen, but that's a first turn Falcon.
Yeah, I think this card has a lot going for it. I find that as the design of Yellow is about, you know, spies, smugglers, the scum and villainy, that kind of stuff, Hero has smuggling and long con to create resources. Both of those cost 0, but there's always this weird funky cost that has to be paid. So like for smuggling, you have to pitch a card to get a resource. Long con, you have to have another copy of it in your discard pile in order to have 3 resources gained by playing this card. So it's really interesting how Yellow can create resources, but it's never easy. It's not just, you know, 0 cost, make a resource. There's always something you have to do. And like Rick was saying, the first thing I thought about was turn 1, getting 2 of these is really nasty, because having 5 resources in Yellow, you can do a lot of things, especially depending on what you're running. If you've got like a Finn, if you're running red, you know, you can pop out, you know, heavy, you can pop out all kinds of things. Your options are opened up really wide, and I think that's good for heroes, because right now they can do a lot of things, but getting expensive cards that came in Awakenings out onto the field, it's not really reliable. It's not very consistent, and you don't see it happen very often. So getting more cards to generate resources, allowing hero players to get consistently more Falcons out, more of this and that out. You know, your launch bays, if you're running Finn, you can get AT-ST out more reliably. If you're running the First Order TIE Fighter, you're going to have enough money to not only pay for shooting, but pay for these big Falcons, these big supports that are really going to help swing the game in your favor. So I think that's really wonderful, as we're going to see some more consistency in big swings for damage and big utility vehicles coming out onto the field for the heroes that villains are going to have to start dealing with, and that's good. That's really good for both sides, I think. My next card, this is Diversion. Obviously, it's yellow. This is a neutral card, though. It's a common, costs 1 resource, and the event states, force an opponent to lose 1 resource, or 3 resources instead if there's another copy of this event in your discard pile. So similar to the last card, this has an effect right off the bat, but it's much, much better if you've already got a copy of this in your discard pile. I feel like the 1 resource to play this card, to eat 1 resource, is probably not great. It's very possible you're going to pitch this card as discard fodder. I mean, if you're looking at an opponent and they've got, 5 resources and they have a Falcon or something they need to play, it's worth trading a 1-for-1. But realistically, you're gonna get this out and about for paying 1 resource to munch 3. And especially if you don't have disrupt sides showing, the threat of removing resources is really nasty from an event card. And I think this will see a lot of play in, I don't necessarily think we're going to see it mostly in heroes, but like in a mill deck, you're definitely going to want to run 2 of these, because just being able to go, okay, cool, 1-for-1 and then 1-for-3, that's nasty. That is really nasty. What do you guys think about the card?
I think, as you said, probably the first time you cast it, unless it's a very, very strategic snipe of keeping them away from being able to do a pay side, I think the first copy would probably be a discard. Because, again, all it cares about is that it's in the discard pile. It doesn't care if you've used it. That said, if you have the second one and you go first in a round and you both get your resources back, you can pay one and might blow them out completely, which, even getting 2 can be good. Hitting 3 is obviously great. I don't know how much I'd run it. I think it's neat. I think it gives you options. It is a pseudo control card. It's too bad that, when I look at cards like this makes me wish that this counted as disrupting, because then cards like My Kind of Scum would have a little more relevance, because this feels like what some of these money cards are trying to interact with and do. I do find it funny that this card is sort of a counter to the other one. Not a counter, but just sort of. It would be hilarious to just, in response, and take away those resources, but that's not common. Yeah, overall, I'm in the middle on this one.
Yeah, I just hope that the full art version of this doesn't have a Jar Jar turned around waving at the camera. But yeah, I don't know how much this will see play. It is good in the fact that if you have the one in the discard pile, you don't have to roll anything to get rid of their resources, and that also is a little dangerous for the number of these types of cards I would want to see in the game. Having that effect too often and too easy to pull off without having to roll the dice to get the disrupt sides, I just kind of wary of that. But if there is ever a choke deck that just its sole purpose is to get rid of your opponent's resources so they can't do anything with it, this will definitely have a place in it.
Yeah, as much as that battlefield we talked about earlier theoretically hurts Mill, this helps because the whole point of that deck is to eat your cards and eat your resources. So the things you roll you can't resolve, and you can't pay for your cards, you can't pay for your upgrades, and half of the time you're trying to roll resources just to pay for your stuff. And then on top of that, I've still got Vader and Jabba dice that can disrupt any resources you make. So you're just going to be in a lot of trouble because you're not going to have money, you're not going to have cards, you're not going to have any options. Outside of that, I wouldn't necessarily think of a hero deck that really wants this, because at this point, the way heroes are built, they need to deal damage, and they need to do it through either rolling out damage or, like, if you have a Qui-Gon, getting shield shenanigans off. You're not necessarily disrupting the opponent's economy. So even though this is neutral, I feel like this is probably going to see way more play in villain than it will ever see play in hero. But there's a lot more sets to be shown. This can show up in a Padme Mill deck because you're also doing a similar thing, trying to eat their cards, eat their resources. But I'm interested to see where this goes, because it could be really good, or it could just kind of sit in someone's card box and not get anywhere. So we'll see what happens when we get more of an established meta and see the set in full.
Real quick, with Rick's comment about the art, it makes me wonder if this is like a tongue-in-cheek joke that all the dungeon were a diversion. I don't know. That just made me laugh.
Well, they kind of were, right? They were just there to have the battle while everybody else snuck in, right?
Right, but I'm speaking more meta contextually. Anyway, take that as you will.
All right, let's move along to the next card, which is my absolute favorite in the announcement. And Rick, you've got this covered, man.
So I got quote-unquote fair trade. 0 cost, uncommon, neutral event. Resolve one of your dice showing resource, then switch all of your resources with an opponent's resources. Basically, if you don't have any resources, you spend one of your resource die, give them one, and take all of theirs. Kind of another choke type card. I don't know if I would play this too often. You're kind of sitting in a lot of situations where your opponent's either sitting on one resource or 2 resources. There's not too many decks that are able to stockpile a lot of resources other than, Crime Lord decks and things like that. But it is a really cool card. Art's great. I don't know if I would play it, being that you have to resolve that one resource to actually make it fair.
I think this card is neat. It's a little situational to get off. You have to have rolled the resource, which, as Rick was saying, it's not always your goal. I mean, it's kind of neat. But yeah, it takes some setup. I've had a hard time evaluating this card. Obviously, there are scenarios, though, where it can be gross, especially after you roll out and then you, pay and drop like an upgrade and you've wiped out your resources but you're sitting on money. It's tough. I mean, you typically spend a lot of your money. A lot of people hover at 1 for the ability to use like removal options and so forth. But there are some ways to like cheat this, quote unquote, like Django activations and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how much this comes up. Again, I'm still not certain I would play it, but it's a neat card. I like it. I think it's neat thematically.
I'm excited about fair trade, quote unquote fair trade. It's not necessarily going to be in every deck. The fact that it's neutral is really great because there's a lot of matchups I feel like this card is going to really, really hurt people. I play pretty exclusively Job Evader Mill. That is my favorite kind of play style, just eating your options and slowly crushing you. And I think fair trade is probably going to be a 1 of, if not 2 of in the deck, because most times if I can't get enough money to get my crime lord rolling, I'm going to be spending it on thermal detonators, on cunnings, on getting stuff out onto the field. And of course the deck runs a lot of easy ways to make resources. You've got datapads and whatnot, so being able to blow all my resources, put something out, and then make a quick buck, and then switch all your money with my money on top of, most of the time I'm showing disrupt sides. You know, my opponent is either going to blow that resource in an attempt to keep keep the viability of using it for something, or if they don't, I'll just eat it. So essentially I got all their money, ate all their money, and I'm sitting in a great place for resource economy. It's not going to fit into every deck. Obviously, if you're looking at, say, like an aggro deck, you're probably not going to even need this card because you're going to be blowing your money on shooting and equipping your guns to your characters. Mid-range decks might need this a little bit, but probably not. I feel like more choke control decks will consider using the card, not necessarily a guaranteed, slot into the deck. I just really love the concept of this, being able to make $1 and then give your opponent whatever you've got and take everything that they've worked so hard to achieve. It is situational, but if you're able to capitalize on, say, another yellow deck that's running, long con, and they just get a lot of money real fast, then you go, cool, fair trade? That is a devastating counterplay. That is a really funny thing to see someone's face when you just take all their money and pass action. So I like it a lot.
It is a higher upside, like to logistics. It's very similar. Most of the time you're going to be using this to gain 2 resources, but it does have the ability to get more than that, where logistics is just limited at 2. But then at the same time, your opponent could be spending all their resources and they're sitting at nothing, and you never want to play this card. But it is a higher upside. It does let you spike some resources quickly if your opponent is able to make it, or if they're just stuck on resources, they haven't drawn upgrades or anything like that. You can push the dagger a little harder and then take all their resources they've been stockpiling.
Yep. So the last card we got in the set is Lone Operative. And Jay, why don't you let us know what this card is all about?
Lone Operative is a very cool card. This card is way up my alley personally. So it is a 3-cost yellow ability upgrade for hero. Its die sides are 2 melee, 2 discard, 1 resource, special miss, and the special is heal 2 damage from attached character, or 3 damage instead if the attached character is your only character in play. I really, really like this card. It has a 2 damage side on it, has a 2 discard side on it. Both are well worth using most of the time, even if they're not necessarily what your deck's built for per se. It makes money. It has 2 chances to heal for 2. That's a lot. That's reliable. Again, just keep talking about Maz. Maz could potentially live forever with this card if she doesn't get blown up in 1 hit, or helping out whoever it's attached to. It's not a weapon or equipment, so it can't be disarmed, which as numbers get higher, disarm has more reach, but it can't hit this. I'm not thinking this is a card that you'd run a bunch of, although maybe. I think it's neat for all forms of decks. I think this goes in combative decks. I think this goes in, stally discard or mill style decks. I like it. I know people are going to look at that 3 cost and go, ew, but I mean, as we've just talked about, a bunch of cards that can generate you a fair amount of money. I think this is a card that isn't frustrating to upgrade and overwrite into. This doesn't have a color requirement of any kind, so I like pretty much everything about this. I think it's incredibly potent that 2 sides of it are heal, so 1 in 3 chance of healing 2 just makes you really sticky. Something that comes up a lot that I think this will help fight against is one of the more frustrating scenarios to be put in, like I was talking about before in my matchup against Matt, is when you're sitting at 1 health on a character and your opponent has a backup muscle, gaining shields doesn't dig you out of that hole, and no number of shields will save you. This card makes backup muscle less punishing for the most part. It lets you heal through and stabilize and, proc it once or twice, and you've now gained more value than what backup muscle can do. One backup muscle can do on its own. So it's really exciting. I like this card.
I think this card is going to make people angry, especially with Cunning. If you happen to roll the special on Cunning and the special on this, and this is your last character in play, 1 action, you gain 6 life. Then, if for whatever reason you're just not rolling specials, you can overwrite second chance onto this for free. If they happen to kill you, you heal 5, you get it back with Starship Graveyard, and then start all over again. So this card is going to be more maddening than any other card that I've seen. For me, at least. I'm going to want to flip a table when somebody plays Lone Operative. I just know it. So it's going to make confiscation, things like that, more prevalent, ways to get rid of these reusable heal effects. But yeah, I just fear seeing a Cunning Lone Operative across the table.
Chewie will never die.
Never.
Yeah, I actually had the same thought process. When I saw the card, generally I think about like the positives of what this card will bring to the game. And the positives that came to mind actually were not how this card will add to the meta, but how certain cards that remove Lone Operative will become much more reliable and much more interesting. Because basically having Field Medic on a stick for a yellow is nasty. You can just 2 hit damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, healing as much as you can possibly roll those specials out. And, with 1/3 of your die showing specials, it's going to happen more often than not. And the fact that, with a Cunning combo, you can just stick this on somebody and, oh, hey, look, Han or Chewie, they have a second chance, and then they get double Cunning, and you just can't kill them. It's really interesting because I thought more about what this card presents to the game and the players more than the card itself. So like you said, the first thought was, oh, backup muscle isn't going to dominate nearly as much. It's still going to be really good, but yellow heroes are going to be able to withstand the backup muscle dominance because you don't have a lot of healing. You have like Field Medic and you have Second Chance. Now that you have this and it's a special side, you have access to this. You can use Cunning. You can do all kinds of things. If you use Emperor's Throne Room, you can at the end of the turn heal your character so they don't die. Just all kinds of great things. And it will be annoying, absolutely, that your opponent can just, on command, heal damage, heal damage, heal damage. So I suspect we're going to see more damage numbers in the 3s and 4s to help combat that, because at the point in the game we're at, you've got a lot of 1s and 2s. Sure, you've got decks that can burst out damage, like, Django and friends, Balatik and friends. You've got, your Vader Raiders that can mind probe you for 5. So there are enough decks with enough damage to kill people where this isn't going to just slow games down. But this will be annoying if you, say, have like a mill deck versus someone running Lone Operative and Cunning, because now you're just never going to be able to kill anybody. You don't deal enough damage. And another thought I had was just the time constraints of how games work. We've seen these Han Ray decks with Starship Graveyard keep reanimating over and over Second Chance. Tacking this on means it's going to be a long game trying to kill that Han if you get lucky. So it's interesting because now playing Confiscation for 3 to bounce this back to your opponent's hand, or bounce now, you can use that to bounce this, or you can pop off somebody's second chance. Looks a little bit more interesting now, because upgrade abilities can't be targeted by disarm. So it's a very interesting situation where Lone Operative offers a lot for heroes, offers a lot to players to be considering when they go up against a yellow hero deck. Am I going to see the Lone Operative? Do I need to have some kind of way to remove it? Is this just going to be a really long and annoying game? Like, lots of thought. I like it a lot.
Now, granted, you do have to roll that special, so it is less easy to pull off than just waiting for them to die with a second chance on. But, you know, that gives your opponent an opportunity to get rid of that special and whatnot. But the fact that Cunning can also target it just makes it so much harder to deal with. But if they're, you know, only upgrades are Lone Operative and Cunning, then they're not dealing a whole lot of damage in return. Unless, of course, you're Chewy. And then, you know, it's going to be rough for a little while until we figure out, you know, ways to get rid of upgrade abilities more consistently.
Right. I feel like the two very, very synergistic characters this goes with right off the bat is Jin and Chewy. Just because Jin already has a 1 discard and a 2 discard side, being able to add on that extra 2 discard means, you know, if you're running her elite, you could hit 5 discard with a great roll. If not, you could potentially have, you know, 6 damage showing between melee and range. Worst comes to worst, you can get some kind of mix of damage, discard, and healing. Chewy's just great because he's got both ranged and melee. So if you roll out that melee side, you potentially could resolve it in one action with, you know, Chewy dice. Lots of things, lots of great combinations to work with. The resource is actually most interesting because it could have been a shield, it could have been anything else like a discard or disrupt, but a resource is great because this gives you more money to play more stuff, which yellow is kind of expensive. So it's very thematic and it fits into a lot of decks. So I'm excited to see this in play. And it's not a legendary, it's a rare, so it's not going to be impossible to get your hands on and, you know, play test this with your decks. And also, it doesn't require any kind of spotting or colored character. You can put this in your deck and pop it onto blue or red characters. So could see a lot of very interesting combos with Lone Operative and your melee characters, like, you know, Qui-Gons, say you add it onto a Luke Skywalker. Just a lot of interesting potential for where this card is and what it can do when you play it. So I'm excited. I think it's amazing. Any other thoughts about the card, guys?
Not so specifically this card, but just what we've seen in this announcement. One thing that was kind of a feeling for a lot of players, and I'll qualify this as it's not as bad as everyone made it out to be, but there was a sort of feeling of strength imbalance between heroes and villains. Whether you think it's a small or a large gap, many players agreed that set 1 favored villains a little more. I think this is a huge upswing for heroes. I mean, there's still a whole bunch of cards left to see. You know, there's probably some powerful effects that we haven't even laid our eyes on for both sides, but I think at least in Hero Yellow, you have a lot to be excited about that's going to swing back in your favor just based on Chewy, Maz, Controlled Explosion of this guy, and you know, all the money cards are pretty cool on their own too. So if you've been feeling like, man, I play with a good friend, Corwin, who for the longest time he just wanted to stick to heroes because he just wanted to play heroes, but he couldn't find a lot of decks that felt competitive for his playstyle and his tastes, and cards like these excite me because I know that he's really excited.
We here at the Knights of Ren are super proud to announce that we are a sponsor of the Steel Open 2017 happening April 7th through 9 in Herndon, Virginia. You can find out more information at steelopen.com, where you can find out the events for not only Destiny, but X-Wing, Armada, and so much more. And you can also register yourself for this 3-day amazing private event. Definitely check this out if you're interested in Destiny or any kind of Star Wars tabletop events. This is the premier place to check out games and get ready for Worlds, because this is happening 1 month before Worlds. You don't want to miss out. SteelOpen.com. All right, that wraps up this week's show. So we have a special announcement. Next week, we are going to be joined by Jeremy. He works at FFG as one of the code designers and developers for Destiny. So we're going to bring him on, query him about what he does, how much he loves Star Wars, what he thinks about Jar Jar Binks, and just kind of discuss the way the game is being built, what he thinks about it, and talk to him about playtesting in getting ready for Worlds, what you should do, what you should look for, things of that nature. So we're really excited to bring him on and just get everyone excited and prepared for Worlds. Also, another big shout out to Cool Stuff Inc., big sponsor. We just appreciate their help. If you're looking for singles, if you're looking for board games, card games, things not necessarily Destiny related, they've got great prices on all kinds of stuff that you should definitely check out. I go there. They're my local store. Highly recommend them. They have great customer service and great products in stock. So give them a look. Also, we would love to just give a huge shout out and thanks to all of our Patreons. We are so thankful and very, very humbled by your participation, by everyone who's helped support the show, who's either liked us, shared us, given them to Patreon, whatever. Thank you to every single person who's participated. We are so excited to come to Worlds, hang out with you. We've got some special swag we're working on for the people we're going to be meeting at Worlds, and we've got a lot of surprises in store. So stay tuned for all those things. And with that being said, this is a wrap for this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and may the Force be with you.